Cool, excellent. Guys, welcome. I think that's a great opener for us to sort of start delving down into some of the questions. So, something that I researched on, David, just probably a question for yourself. So, you deal with a lot of trauma patients directly as well?
We do.
Yeah. So, personally, what are the sort of effects that you feel personally seeing sort of trauma patients? I mean, I know that's a very broad question, sorry, but what are your personal sort of views and effects it has on you?
So trauma, I mean, just to get the language sorted, so trauma in medicine we call any injury a trauma. So that could be an injury that you fall over and hurt your ankle, ranging through to a car crash, ranging through to an assault, and an attempted murder kind of thing. So trauma is a funny one because you're never expecting it. So certainly when we get seriously injured patients in, the way it will be is you'll be dealing with, I don't know, someone who's got a bit of chest pain or indigestion or whatever, and the phone will go, an ambulance service are bringing someone in, or the air ambulance is bringing someone in, and you've got to completely sort of put that package down and pick up the trauma one and run with it. And we deal with it as a team, so there's a team leader, but there's also an anaesthetist, so someone at the top end to take care of the breathing of the patient. There's someone to take care of the abdomen, someone to take care of the chest, someone to take care of the limbs, and it's not very frantic situation. So it's really things are happening very quickly, and you've no time to think or write things down. We follow a protocol. So the net effect of that is when a patient comes in, you're very distant from the patient. You certainly, from my point of view, I can't let myself get involved in that patient because they are at that point a job, and that job has to be dealt with and it has to be done properly. And to get emotionally involved in that would slow me down.
Okay.
So the effect that has, and I think that was your question, is the effect that has. The effect that has is when that case is finished, the patient's hopefully survived and maybe gone to theatre, or if they've not, maybe they've died or whatever. What happens then is it's the biggest anticlimax in the world, and you've had a massive rush of adrenaline. You've been doing something that's, it's almost, exciting is the wrong word, it's been very adrenaline fueled,
right. And
at the end of it, it's been quiet, and then you've got to process all those emotions that you couldn't process in that time.
Do you get desensitized to it? Because, for example, I have a friend who is training to be a nurse,
right,
and she deals with childbirth. She deals with sort of, when I say trauma patients, what I mean personally by that is people being stabbed, stabbed wounds, bringing it into the topic. So, do you, as a person, away from your title, get desensitized to that at some point?
Yeah.
Because the reason why I say that is because my friend, she mentioned a coping mechanism. Sometimes she laughs it off, sometimes she cries it off, and sometimes she's genuinely numb to it. So you being in your profession for that long, how do you deal with that as a human being, I guess?
Yeah, so I think you used the word desensitized, and I think that is the thing that upsets me most about myself. One of the hardest parts is going home at tonight and thinking, how can I not be upset or distressed by what I've seen today?
That's deep.
And that is the worst part. You go home and you think, I've had an elderly person die on me today. I've seen someone who's been assaulted by their partner. I've seen a child who may or may not die. I mean, that would be a pretty bad day. But it's the realization that I've turned into such a hard person where actually I can put those emotions to one side and not have to bother about them.
So you just pick them up and deal with them?
Yeah, sometimes I have really bad days.
Wow.
Sometimes really, really, really bad days.
Sorry, is that where it all like gets on top and you've kind of bottled, it's effective like bottling it up then? Because obviously you've seen it all but you've not released anything.
So I tell you what, one of the hardest things I've ever done is tell a lad that his mother had died. And his mother was, he was your age, and the mother was, I don't know, 40 something, and she just collapsed in the street, and it was a police officer actually that did CPR, brought them in, and anyway, they died. And he just got a job. He'd just got a paper round or something. He got his, and he said to me, "Oh, it's a real bummer that it's happened today. I'm like, well, it's pretty bad it happened at all, but it's why today? What happened? Oh, because I was going to get Mum. We were going to get Chinese, and I was going to pay for it tonight with my first wage packet. And I'm like, oh my God, that just at that point when that happened, all of the horrible experiences I'd had all came out in that one moment, because he was, and I think he ended up going home saying, oh, well, we'll still buy the Chinese, but I'll just get Mum a spring roll. She won't eat it, but and it was like, oh man, that was difficult. So yeah, occasionally it all bubbles to the surface.
So you get triggers then? Something triggers you during your job?
Another trigger is when they tell me how long they've been married. So you get this lovely old couple in, and George has died and Doris is there, and you have to tell Doris that George has died, and they say, oh, we've been married 65 years and I've never spent a night apart. And you're like, oh, you're just breaking my heart now, love. Yeah. It's little things, the strangest, oddest little things will just trigger you. Yeah. On the other hand, I can have some, huge fella screaming in my face in A&E, and that's like, just shut up, man. Whatever. I'm not bothered.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sorry. I'm getting so animated. I'm making background noises here.
You know what? I think it's great seeing that, because
you just come across very passionate. And you all do in your own way. But speaking to you, you're very passionate, even down to you speaking about the effects it's had on you as a person. Yeah. I can just feel passion oozes from you, with regards to your job.
It's very nice to see, because when you are in an environment like a GP or in a hospital, the doctors seem very desensitized to it. So I've had experiences, I'm not going to go into a little bit too graphic, where I had to be in a hospital with a friend, and doctors literally just walking around with a piece of paper. I don't know whether it's a tick sheet or making notes, and that's that, 1-2 conversation, and that's that. You don't really get a sense of, hey, doctors are actually humans too. If that makes sense. So it was actually really, really nice to see that.
Can I just sort of add to dialogue, really? The strange thing for me in my job, I think, is that I sort of take comfort from the fact that I have professionals around me who deal with it the same way. So I don't see it as being desensitised. I see it as pretty much as you've said, that in order to get to what you need to get to,
Fair point,
you have to remain professional more than anything else. But my trigger, actually, Samara, one of the things that triggers me, particularly in working with the Violent Reduction Unit, is when I see a young lad, because I've got a young son, sometimes looking like my son, who has, it's a fatality or they've been stabbed. I'm going to be honest, for me as a mother, that's my trigger. When it's a young person and I think, gosh. And of course, I live in this area. I'm a resident of Bedfordshire, and very often they're young people that I know. And I'd find that, I get the job done, similar to yourself, but I do find that difficult.
Linking that same sort of to your job from day to day, I mean, how do you cope with sort of hearing about crime, murder? I don't know whether,
Yeah, you kind of scraped my question. How does crime affect you?
How does crime affect you, basically?
So I think what Kimberly says there is that I've got a 24-year-old son. So, and as I've grown up in the job, and that sounds really odd, doesn't it? But I feel I grew up in the job because I joined when I was 19. So, and I had my son when I was 25. And being a detective, so over my career, predominantly I've dealt with serious crimes. So, what we have lots of acronyms in policing, so everything's a 3-letter word. If you've watched Line of Duty, there's always a thing where you've got to try and find out what all those little what it means. Yeah. So I'm a SIO, which is a senior investigating officer, which means I worked over on what we call our major crime unit, which is over in Huntingdon, as a detective inspector leading murder inquiries. You get the job done, and there is a murder happens, you go out to it, you deal with it, it's fast, it's frenetic, all those things, all those actions happen that you have to do, because what you're wanting to do is what we call that golden hour. And it's not just an hour though, it's one of those things that we say, it's golden hour principles, it's the same in medical. You really got to go out there, collect all that evidence, try and get the witnesses, try and get the CCTV. If the suspects are there, try and make sure that they're arrested appropriately, that the evidence isn't lost from the suspect, i.e. when they're taken into custody, those sorts of things. Because you want everything and every opportunity, every bit of evidence there is to bring the offender to justice. That's our job. And actually, it's really... So you're in the midst of doing that. And especially when there's a connection be it somebody that's the same age as your parents or the same age as your child, it's really quite difficult. I think I was most affected bizarrely by someone that was the same age as my dad. And we're talking obviously here a lot about knife crime and things, but one of my real passions, it's all very well that I investigate crime and things, but you know what I really want to do is stop it happening in the first place. And the bit that's most important for me, and I think I've done a couple of documentaries around it, is one punch killing people. So you have one punch kills, that assault where someone's in the street, and there was a job in a car park in central Bedfordshire where there were two 64-year-old men, and one of them had a disagreement with the other one around a disabled car parking space. This guy shouted out to this person, "You don't look very disabled." Well, interestingly, I don't know what disabled looks like. Because what is disabled? How do you define it? How do you define it? How do you say you look disabled? You've got no right to shout across a car park at somebody. How do you know that maybe there's a reason why they're needing that blue badge? It's no one's. In my opinion,
it's not always physical, is it?
It's not always physical. It could be lots of different things. So, quite rightly, the chap came over and said. We'll never know what he said, actually, but we saw it on CCTV. He was kind of remonstrating, but in quite a passive way with this guy. And then he does this kind of hand as if to say, "Do you know what? I can't be bothered to talk to you," and walks away. As he walks away, the guy gets out of his Range Rover, goes to the front of the car, punches him once, and the guy falls to the ground. And he hits his head. So it's one punch, falls to the ground, and that's it. Lights out. That's it. Dead. And the saddest bit about it, his wife is in the supermarket getting I think, the real normal things. And I think the bit for me was she was getting a birthday card. And I know that it'd be the sort of thing that my dad would do is he will delay going into the shop so he doesn't have to see my mum picking every single card out, whereas you just go and just choose it. Those sorts of things happen. Yeah. And unfortunately, she came out of the shop and she thought that, she said, "I knew it was him. I knew it was him that there was going to be there was an ambulance. I knew it was going to be him because he just got over cancer that week." It's such a sad story.
And that's why he had the blue badge?
No, he didn't have the blue badge at all. She did, because she's got chronic rheumatoid arthritis. So it's always my story about this. And it's on a Channel 4 documentary, and I think my heart goes out to those two victims around it. They are just amazing. The victims' families, how they've been around it, and the fact that they want to do the right thing by telling people that walk away, don't fight, because do you know what? It's not worth it. Because not only has he lost his life, the victim, but the person that did one punch never intended him to die. He never went out that day to do that. But the whole consequences, it's a bit like that sliding doors, that effects of what happens. And I think, so that's been my passion, and they're the things that affect me most. But how can I change and what can I do about it? Then I think that's when you have to say, do you know what, my job isn't just to bring offenders to justice and lock people up. It's not just about that. My job is also to prevent it, to educate, raise awareness, and some of the stories that we have. But yeah, I do get affected by it. I do desperately get affected by things that happen, be it on a couple of weeks ago, there a really horrific accident on the motorway, and I'm called out to deal with that. And you see stuff that you can never unsee something, because if you see something, you can't unsee it, you can't unhear it, and you can't unsmell it, and they stay with you. And at sometimes it gets to you. So it might be a long walk, it might be just a bit of takes a few days to kind of readjust yourself. But we do have feelings, and we are human.